the first like overall reactions. What was it like in the room? What was the vibe? All those sorts of things, and then I'll get into my more specific questions.
Myself, including pretty much everyone there, had the same feeling of, is this really happening?
Yeah.
It really was, is this really happening? And I even talked to people in the athletic department before Bill Belichick went to the podium, and they were like, wait, is this? I'm not even sure if this is real right now. And I said, you know what? It's not going to be real to me until I see him actually sit down and talking to that microphone. And when he did, it was still, oh my gosh, that's Bill Belichick still sitting up there talking to the microphone as the head coach of North Carolina. It was just, everyone was just kind of like, wow, this is a thing. This is real.
I'll tell you what it felt, because obviously I watched it here getting ready for the show. We went on air at 3. My vibe was, especially right out the gate, was almost like stay with me here, like a wedding reception.
Yeah.
And the reason being was everyone was just in such a good mood. Everyone was so excited. Everyone was like, you knew that it was buzzworthy. Like everybody took off work. Everybody's got off the next day. Let's go have some drinks. Let's dance.
Long weekend. Here we come.
And the way I knew it was the same joke was made 3 times right at the top. It was the Chancellor Roberts. Oh, look at this. We have a hoodie with the sleeves cut off.
Yeah.
Here you go. And then Bubba Cunningham, the athletic director, was like, oh, but wait, look at my sport coat. And he changed his sport coat for his suit to one that had the sleeves cut off.
Yeah.
And then Bill Belichick went, thank you for the sweatshirt. I actually have one here. And he brought up his dad's sweatshirt from when his dad was a coach at UNC decades and decades and decades ago. And all I thought was, like, the fact that everyone laughed at all 3 jokes just shows like how warm of a room it was. It was the same punchline 3 times. Bing, bing, bing. Gotta laugh every time. I was like, oh, everybody there is just, they're just vibing. Everybody is very excited about the way this is going.
Yeah, they definitely leaned into that a little bit. And even Bill Belichick kind of joked himself. He was getting a little long-winded on an answer, and he goes, I'm sorry, long answer for a short question. You guys know how I get at press conferences. It's like, all right, well, like, you got to chuckle. It's like, all right,
that's good.
He's self-aware. He knows.
It's good. So with everyone as excited there, right? There was Julius Peppers.
Julius Peppers sat right up front.
I thought it was a smart thing for them to acknowledge him right at the front because the reports were that he was supporting a different candidate, Steve Wilkes, to be the head coach. And having him there front and center was kind of like a, hey, we're all on board here. Julius Peppers, for better or worse, is going to represent the former UNC Tar Heels and assume that everybody else is falling in line behind him. Michael Lombardi seemed like, who is the GM, former NFL GM, front office executive, worked with Belichick at multiple stops. Felt like he was playing the role appropriately. Like every time there was a live shot on the news, every time somebody posted a video on social media, he was like just schmoozing, right? He was in the background shaking someone's hand, talking like he is. That's his role. We know, like Belichick made the joke, right? He's not the most long-winded guy on the planet. He's not the most like outgoing. He's a football hermit. Michael Lombardi looks like the guy that's going to be out there schmoozing and shaking hands and asking for cash.
Yeah, we actually did have a chance to have a conversation with him. I know we'll probably have that audio maybe even tomorrow with Michael Lombardi. But we had a chance to talk to him, but it was very, very brief because he was being pulled in some different directions. And he talked about the recruiting and his role. And he said, opportunity to work with Bill again because those two worked together when they were in Cleveland, when Belichick was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, when he was in New England, obviously. And he talked about, he's like, it's funny how he mentioned his book. But he mentioned how he says, it's pretty simple. As long as you make sure that you have good scheme, good coaching, good players, you should win football games. And that's what they're trying to do. It's like we feel like we have a good coach. We'll make sure that we have the right coaching staff to make sure our scheme is good and that fits the best players that we can have. And he was asked about recruiting, Bill Belichick was. And it was actually Chris Lee, WREL, asked the question, which was a fantastic question about what's your recruiting approach? Are you trying to dominate national, in the state? Are you going nationals, trying to spread out a little bit? Are you going portal? Like what is your recruiting approach? And he says, it's kind of a mixture of both. Like, obviously, we want to have the best players that are from here, but he says UNC, North Carolina, is a national brand. there's no reason why we can't get great players from across the country to come here. So it's like, yeah, we're going to try and get some of those big players that might be from other places. And by other places, I mean maybe from the West Coast or whatever. But he seems all in on recruiting not only just the best players in North Carolina, but again, tapping into different areas as well.
Here's one of, and actually maybe you can help us with this. It felt like there was a little bit of walking back of all the all-in on pro style everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right when he was on Pat McAfee earlier this week, many of the reports about what he planned to do with the program was he is going to go full, and like it's going to be essentially a carbon copy of what he did with the Patriots. Just they're going to have to go to class from 10 to 2. And it did seem like he walked some of that back and was more like, no, I'm here to coach college football, and we may have some college coaches on the staff, and like it's. I want him to be the NFL factory coach. Like I think that's a lane that they can fill. In the room, did it seem like he was walking it back as much as it did on YouTube?
I would say he was more or less showing he's willing to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the big thing. It's like he understands that I can't run truly an NFL team because you don't have NFL players. You might have future NFL players, but you don't have 53 guys plus practice squad and all that are actually our NFL players. I think he showed the willingness and ability, or he's willing to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the ability to do so that's going to be proven over time. But when he was asked about recruiting again, about, hey, are you going to go into kids' living rooms and talk to players and stuff? He goes, I'm going to put a lot of that on the assistants to do that. I'm going to handle a lot of the on-campus recruiting. But if I have to do more of that to get the top players that I need to have, I'll do that more.
And he was right. He did say, like, there's a lot of NCAA rules limiting what head coaches can do.
Yes.
There's not that much time where he can be in a living room.
Very true.
And he said, like, if those rules change, I would. And the whole thing is a bit fever dream-ish, because to imagine Bill Belichick in his sweats walking into some 17-year-old's room and hanging out with mom and dad and talking about, like, no, what do you want? You want to be an engineer? Oh, what do you want to do? Business? We got some schools. I'll put you in touch with a professor. It doesn't quite add up when it seems like his NFL persona was like, here's the best we can do, take it or leave it. Do you want to be a Patriot or not? And this recruiting is just so different than that.
And I think by having college coaches on his staff that have been there and done that before is going to be vital for him. He can't just have an NFL staff.
All right,
he just can't have an NFL staff.